about Jacob. And we left off with Laban leaving. But I want to hit one more thing before we go about that. One of those things, because I think it's going to be important later. And that is, it wasn't just Jacob that felt he was being cheated by Laban. It was also Leah and Rachel. They felt their heritage was, and their things were being taken from them. So they went in and took all of his personal gods. Now, probably these were very valuable. Because if they were just a little stone thing they put on the altar, he wouldn't have been upset. But that's one of the things he was most upset about, was that his household gods were stolen. So probably they were fairly valuable. Maybe like with a lot of things in those days, they were made of gold. Well, Laban looked for them, but he couldn't find them because Rachel was sitting on the camel's seat that had them. So they were hidden. Now this is going to come into apply later. Now, like I said, I've had trouble with this study on Jacob because it's confused me a lot. Every time I read it, I have to go, well, is that, let me try to understand it. And I hope I have come to a good understanding of what God did in molding Jacob and the lessons that we can learn from that. Now, he's going to go back to the land that God has promised. But he's got to pass by Esau. Well, they didn't leave on the best of terms. He left because Esau was planning to kill him. So he's scared. He's afraid of what's going to happen. So he starts planning. Because now that's one thing that Jacob is good at. He's a good planner. He always plans. Now there may not always be the most moral of plans, but he's always planning. He's always thinking. So he divides up his people into two camps, which is good strategy. If Esau attacks, he'll only get one of them, and the others can escape. So he's still thinking. He's trying to think of what he can do. But he's very worried. I want you to turn now to Genesis 32. And we'll start reading with verse 9. And Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham, and God of my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me, return to your country and to your kindred, that I may do you good. I am not worthy of the least of all the deeds of steadfast love and all the faithfulness that you have shown to your servant. For with only my staff I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become two camps. Please deliver me from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, that he may come and attack me, the mothers with the children. But you said, I will surely do you good, and make your offspring as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude. Now this prayer sounds like he's giving it all over to God. But I think as we read on, we'll see that it's not 100% yet. He still hasn't quite got it. He's willing to pray that, but his actions don't always show his total trust in God to do what God has promised. I mean, that's what he has always been doing from the very beginning. God promised that he would be the one that Abraham's lineage would follow. Told that to his mother. But everything his mom and he did, and he's done in his life, has been to make sure that those things happen rather than trusting God that they will happen. Now, he decides, because he's still thinking, what can I do? Well, I'm going to send a present ahead. So he sends on present. Now, I don't know. Because Esau wasn't upset with that present. I might have been. You stole my birthright. You stole my blessing. And you think a couple hundred head of animals can repay that? But Jacob is still trying to make things work out. Now, strange thing is going to happen now. He sent everybody on ahead. He stayed behind. I'm going to start reading with verse 24. And Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched his hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for the day has broken." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." And he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." Then he said, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with men, and have prevailed." I'm going to keep reading, and then we're going to go back and look at this. Then Jacob asked him, "Please tell me your name." But he said, "Why is that you ask my name?" And there he blessed him. Now, one thing I want us to get out of this is, you remember over 400 years from this time, Moses is going to say, "Who shall I tell them who sent me?" And he said, "The God of your fathers, God of Jacob, Abraham." And then he says what we have taken to be a name, Jehovah, which means I am that I am. He didn't give his name here, and it's really not a name. Jehovah really means I am that I am. I am the pre-existent one. I am who I am. That's an important thing to see, that God didn't change. He didn't give his name because he doesn't really have a name. He's the Almighty. this was one of the things that confused me. The name Israel means God prevails. But it says here, he says, you shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with men and have prevailed. You prevailed. But your name is Israel. God prevails. So I had to look a little bit deeper into the name Israel. And its meaning is let God prevail. And if you let God prevail, then God prevails. So that's the way that it's usually thought of, as God prevails. But God's being a little bit sarcastic here. He's going, your name is let God prevail. You know, your name is stop doing it yourself. Let God prevail. Oh, now I get it. I was having trouble, putting that together. And the thing is that Jacob is named Israel twice. He is named Israel twice. There we go. Verse 35, chapter 35, verse 1. This is later on. Time has passed. God said to Jacob, arise to go up to Bethel and dwell there. Make an altar there to the God who appeared to you when you fled from your brother Esau. So Jacob said to his household and all who were with him, put away the foreign gods that are among you, and purify yourselves, and change your garments. Let us arise and go up to Bethel, so that I may make there an altar to the God who answers me in the day of my distress, and has been with me wherever I have gone. So they gave to Jacob all the foreign gods that they had, and the rings that were in their ears. Jacob hid them underneath the terebinth tree that was in their shed. When he went to meet Esau, Esau didn't want the gift. Esau was glad to see him. I think that was the beginning of the change in Jacob. He saw that all of his maneuverings were not what made it work. That it was God. So later when God tells him to go and make an altar, he says, I'm going all the way with this. I want you to give me all those false gods. That includes the ones that they stole from Laban. And the earrings. Maybe they had been blessed, I don't know. But what he did really struck me. Because it showed his sincerity. Instead of selling those household gods, because there were still a lot of people that would worship those gods, and that would give him money. He didn't. He said, I don't want them anymore. So he buried them. He hid them. They wouldn't do him any good. He didn't want them anymore. Didn't want to benefit from them. Didn't want other people to use them. This shows that he had changed from being a schemer And now we're going to get to this second naming. God appeared to Jacob again when he came from Paddan Aram and blessed him. And God said to him, "Your name is Jacob. No longer shall your name be called Jacob, but Israel shall be your name." So he called his name Israel and said to him, "I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall come from you, and kings shall come from your own body. That land, the land I gave to Abraham and Isaac, I will give to you. I will give the land to your offspring after you." Then God went up from him in the place where he had spoken with him. This time, there is no sarcasm in the name. This time he's saying, your name is God Prevails. You have figured out that I win without any of your machinations. Now, one thing that I learned from this, I'll tell you. I wanted to show how God molded Jacob into a man that was worthy of being a hero of faith. But what I saw was he molded him into a man who wanted to let God win, to let God be the ruler. When I look at him, Jacob still had his faults. He still was not what he should be. I mean, after all, the trouble between he and Esau started because his dad favored Esau and his mama favored him. And what did he do in his life? Did he favor Joseph and Benjamin above the others? Yes, he did. He carried on that same, and I'm going to say sinful trait of favoring one or the other instead of giving each one what they need. He carried that over. And so the thing is to get out of this is you can be one of God's heroes even if you don't change everything. Even if you still have your faults. Even if you're still not exactly what you ought to be. God's perfection takes place in heaven. It's perfecting here. Perfection doesn't get till we get there. That we don't actually make it. And that's a great lesson to learn, is that you don't have to be perfect. In fact, you won't. But you can still be the person that God wants you to be. And when I was looking at this, it got me to think, because I do think that one of the lessons we need to learn from Jacob is not to choose favorites in your children. I think that is probably, to me, one of the biggest lessons, but that's because it strikes home to me. My sister and I, we get along okay now. We didn't. We were brother and sister, but we did not get along. together. And we stayed up till, 4 in the morning? Talking. She did not like me because I wouldn't let her play with me and the cousins and everybody. And I wouldn't. Because if she even laid a peep, we got a whooping. Because she was Daddy's princess. She thought we didn't play with her because we didn't like her. No, it just wasn't safe to play with her. It wasn't safe. So we sat there and talked till 4 in the morning and found out it wasn't that we didn't like each other. It was the way that Dad had treated us was the reason we did not get along. I wasn't really mad at her, and she wasn't really mad at me. But we were mad at the way that we had been treated. And so treat your children and your grandchildren with the same amount of love. Don't treat them equally. Treat them fairly. There is a difference. Equal is everybody gets the same thing. Fair is everybody gets what they need. And believe me, that's a lot harder than being equal or favoritism. It is much harder to say, what do my children need, and give it to them. I gave my children what I wanted as a child. That wasn't what they needed. Because, like a lot of us, we think of our children as little us's. They're not. They're different. And each one needs to be treated differently. But the wonderful thing is it's just like with Jacob. Jacob did some terrible things. But God cleansed him in the end. Don't look back at the mistakes of your life. Look forward to being obedient to God for the rest of it, however long that is. So, anybody needs to answer the invitation in a public way, would ask you to come as we sing number 948.